Hi, and Happy New Year to everyone. Today we will go over the astrology predictions for the week of January 2, 2022. In terms of the stock market direction, I think Monday is going to be an up day. Tuesday, I think, has a great probability of market going down. Wednesday and Thursday look like up days to me, and then Friday yet again we'll see market going down. In terms of the general overview of the influences, first let's go over some of the times for the week. Then we will go over some glance for January and February, and after that I'll give a few highlights for the upcoming rest of the year. So for the period from about December 30th through January 7th, and especially 3rd through the 5th of January, we will have important influence that will have to do with either lawsuits or legal decisions or decisions about international relations, long-distance transportation and communication, and in particular those decisions or either some legal acts or some sort of legal determinations may specifically relate to areas that are related to Pisces, so something like pharmaceuticals, for example, or like maybe who can or cannot travel based on their status with respect to COVID or some other disease, for example. Or it could be related to some legal considerations as far as rules, for example, on how to safely transport some sort of chemical or some hazardous material. Or it may have to do with, again, important decision related to, for example, drugs or, again, chemicals, drugs, even beverages, movies, and any of those areas. And it may also involve individuals such as prominent CEOs, politicians, or any other really celebrities that, again, are either actual actors, which, again, from a movie industry, for example, we may hear about some important either lawsuits or some decisions about their legal status, and or it could be related to, again, CEOs of companies that are, say, pharmaceutical companies, but also it could be related to really maritime transportation, Navy, again, chemical companies, and again, the news may relate to somebody either, say, going through some sort of a lawsuit, for example, or going through some litigation, or perhaps, again, a new law coming out that affects specifically either shipment or operation of such company. And again, the areas where these laws may specifically apply, again, it could be international or long-distance transportation of hazardous liquids, chemicals, oil, gas, things of that nature, maybe legal or some other kind of status or international, decision about some sort of issue related to Navy, whether or not particular, ships can cross, certain lines, or whether a particular pipeline can be built here or is allowed to operate. So those are the issues that we will see in the news, featured more prominently through about the 7th of January. Let's see, and also related to weather, at this time there may be increased news about increased precipitation, such as flooding, strong snowstorms, and again, those weather events may specifically affect long distance or international travel and transportation. And other areas that we may also see more featured in the news through about the 7th of January would be areas that are either hidden or secretive or just kind of far away and isolated in some way. So prisons, monasteries, healthcare facilities, even the biomedical labs, anything that kind of operates sort of out of sight or produces things that are not necessarily visible. So maybe like some group of hackers and they're doing things behind the scenes and the effect of their actions is not immediately obvious. And again, those activities may either be brought into scrutiny this week and again through the 7th or so due to some lawsuits or due to some legal judgments related to individuals from those areas or related to their activities. So for example, a retirement facility, or again, a recycling plant, anything that's again hidden, secretive, or relates to end of lifetime, end of cycle, like a waste storage facility, for example, and maybe some legal decision is made on whether or not certain types of products can be stored there as waste, for example. Let's see. For the US, the 3rd of January, as I predicted already last week, seems to be important in the sense that there may be increased news about some prominent either politicians or actors or celebrities, some prominent maybe CEOs, and those people may be featured with respect to something related to finance, either their earnings or decision that they make, or something that's happens to them is important and impacts like a large company and its earnings, for example, or it may have to do with US leadership as a country on a global scale, and there may be some either slight concerns or some unpleasant news, again, maybe some perception of that the earnings are lower, or there's some concerns about basically being a leader in financial sphere. Now I'm recording this at the end of the day on the 3rd, so actually I haven't seen anything that jumped at me that would fit this particular definition, other than there was news about basically a verdict coming up for Elizabeth Holmes, who basically previously found a blood testing startup Theranos, and jury ended up being hung on some issues, but they did convict her on 4 different counts of like fraud and conspiracy. And so this, I guess, could be considered somewhat related in the sense that it is a prominent person. There was a lawsuit, and it is related to Piscean area in general, where we have just Jupiter entered Pisces and is squaring the nodes. And another area that specifically is, again, specific to the US, although the news came up on the 1st, was about the chair of the FDIC, who was appointed by Trump, basically announced that she will resign in February, and that's before her term actually would end in 2023. And of course, in this case, we do have a prominent person, and it is related to finance, and the news is more of the is somewhat, I wouldn't say distressing, obviously it depends on who you are, whether you see this as a distressing news, but it is a news that signifies that things are not going as well among leadership leaders in the US, and again related to finance. So another area to cover, and again I mentioned this last week, is crypto. And basically what I was expecting is from December 31st through January 3rd that there would be a blimp up, kind of a short-lived rally for Bitcoin, where Jupiter is basically right now crossing Venus as 0-degree Pisces in the Bitcoin's natal chart. Previously, last year, this coincided back in May of 2021, coincided with a large drop. This time I didn't see some negative transits that were also present at that time. So I was expecting it to be basically a short rally. I did see there was a basically about like 1.5 thousand I would say rally or slight, I guess, increase in the value of Bitcoin from about the 31st to the 1st of January, which, after that, the following 2 days, I think it basically went down to where it started on the 31st. So I would say there was a small jump, but nothing basically amazing, nothing too crazy. Let's see. And as I mentioned, Tuesday, I think the market will go down. Then Wednesday and Thursday look somewhat more stable, somewhat more optimistic for me, where I think the market may go up. And starting Friday, especially Friday afternoon into next week, early next week, we will have some more difficult influences where I think we may see a drop already this Friday, the 7th, but then starting even into next week, there may be a really potential for a really major drop in the market. So for the US, sort of as a background influence, despite these specific expectations of a large drop, I guess, early next week, 7th through the 18th, and especially 12th through 14th, may actually see positive news about things like earnings, healthcare, and some sort of activities related to either social support or even international partnerships. There may be some positive news where perhaps these programs like social support programs, like helping the needy, or providing, some sort of benefits related to healthcare, those areas may actually see increased funding, or there may be some increased opportunities basically to help those who are sick and elderly, etc., as well as there's increased positive time basically for improving international relations and maybe expanding some partnerships so that would be profitable over time, or making some other beneficial connections. And that's for the US from the end of this week, the 7th through the 18th of January. But despite this kind of a more positive streak, I would say for the US, definitely be on the lookout for next week. So that's where my glance ahead section comes up. Basically, next week definitely is one of the more stressful weeks, or weeks where there may be increased volatility in the market, especially the 10th and the 11th of January. And specifically, I think the entire week may see some strong volatility, with perhaps 10th and 11th seeing a drop, then market kind of recovering on the, 12th and maybe even 13th, and then again following by another drop, perhaps not as large of a drop, but still another drop on the either 13th and or 14th of January. And in addition to the market volatility, there may be some increased news or concerns about areas related to Neptune, so things like oil prices, gas, as well as, again, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, infectious diseases, and some either deceptive or kind of secretive activities where things come out that are disturbing or confusing, and also some problems perhaps for Navy, maybe some even problems for delivery of, say, oil and chemicals, again, like a fire at an oil rig, or fire at a marina, or an accident involving a boat, for example, or some leak, of an oil pipe, or even fighting over oil, some upsets regarding, again, oil prices, or some deals regarding oil and gas, and maybe this expected drop in the market, again, that's for next week, early next week, may indeed be associated with perhaps concerns about either another either COVID spike, or about some international tensions, again, related to either oil or related or involving rather Navy in some areas that are either coastal or near bodies of water, or even events that are occurring either under the water or involve, again, some bodies of water, and there's some skirmishes there, and or accidents, fires, attacks, even explosions like a chemical attack or chemical leak, perhaps also impacting transport, maritime transport. So basically potential for water contamination, air contamination, just basically unsettling time, which again, either just this the news about potentially spike of another sort of epidemic, or news about this kind of fighting, or news about just there being problems or high say oil prices. Those may both contribute to market going down, as well as just to problems for communication and transportation, especially over sea. And at the same time, as I mentioned already this week, I would expect increase in precipitation, but next week is actually going to be even worse, and those particular events, maybe like snowstorms or ice storms, rains, flood, etc., may actually intensify, and at that time the damage that they may do may be even greater, where again, if there's like a storm, it may cause power outage, which may cause fires, or it may cause leak of some contaminated water, or again, contamination of the environment. So it's not just that there is excessive precipitation, but it may also cause, again, some other additional basically problems, which again can be associated with something that's poisonous and causes some sort of contamination. Let's see. As I mentioned, the 12th and or 13th of January may see market recover. But then, yet again, on the 13th and 14th, things can yet again see a downturn, again on some concerns. And at that time, yet again, there may be problems for communication, transportation, perhaps due to weather or due to these difficult activities. Either, like I said, some skirmishes around Navy, involving Navy, for example, or areas that are, again, near bodies of water, or problems, say, like attack or even a leak associated with like oil rig, spilling some oil, and obviously this would cause problems for transportation. At the same time, that's global prediction, and there may also be some even focus on underwater volcanoes, if there are any in the world, something that's erupting that's either on an island or underwater, something that's producing a lot of like something poisonous, either gas or steam. But that's global. And at the same time, again, next week may see significant transits for the US that also may, perhaps that's where we will see additional focus on like oil, gas, Navy, maritime transportation. And there's an increased probability of, again, accidents, some confusion, bad weather, and that bad weather perhaps causing accidents or confusion, such as maybe a ship is proceeding to the wrong location because their navigation tool is broken for some reason, or there's some intentional or unintentional misleading information is being fed to that not vehicle, but ship or something like that. And again, they're doing something or where they shouldn't be, maybe in a particular area, or there's some other kind of confusion. And basically, it may lead to some problems where, again, somebody's attacking somebody, or there's an accident, or there's a spill. And that is, again, potential for US specifically, and again, globally also. Similar themes will be prominent. That's next week. Let's see. And then for February, early, I would say 7th, maybe through the 18th of February, we may see some increased news out of China. Again, they're maybe covering something, not covering, but rather coming up with some additional, basically, crackdown on the use of crypto or some other kind of regulations that may affect cryptocurrency value, and or some financial policy tweaks, adjustments, again, out of China that may affect basically currency values in general, like USD value, as well as specifically currency values, cryptocurrency rather value, which I think may go down potentially if indeed such news out of China will come up. So I think there's a strong chance, and that's again China 7th through the 18th of February. And generally for the next month for China, January actually looks like a month where they will be putting a lot of effort into either improving or expanding or investing in areas that are related basically to high tech, telecommunications, airlines, airspace projects, AI, robotics. So basically anything that's advanced, anything that has to do with like electronics, electricity, airspace, some really innovative stuff. And the focus may be on, again, investing in those areas, expanding them, and maybe even building additional infrastructure to support those areas, such as maybe a new airport or transportation from one airport or from one such high-tech hub to another, or again, building a plant that will manufacture, say, electric vehicles or robots, or something that, again, involves like providing actual structural, I guess, support to advance these industries. So in China, basically, in January and into February, focus on, again, this expansion, in improving kind of high-tech sort of edge in those kind of industries. And there may also be, in January, especially for China, focus on either improving or making some moves, basically, to expand the influence in the entertainment industry, such as, for example, through social media applications or some other online activities. And again, this may have to do with digital kind of control or regulations of digital assets, or perhaps offering a different way of using digital, again, assets for online activities, or regulating the use of, cryptocurrencies specifically for online activities. So this definitely, there'll be some new kind of initiatives coming out of China, and again, especially in February, I think they may affect the value of cryptocurrencies, potentially causing a drop there. And again, 7th through 18th of February specifically. So my 2022 predictions are still coming up. I'm still working on those, but to just give you a few highlights for the most, I guess, important days, I would say, or periods for 2022. I think we will see a lot of important news, important events in about around early April, especially 4th and 5th. Then also in around 1st of August, and ramping up to that already late July, we will see some developments. And then also around October 11th, plus minus a few days, will be another important time. And at those times, basically, will be some events that will affect value again of currencies, cryptocurrencies, and there may be some important kind of decisions that affect financial institutions and banks. And I guess even before that, before getting into April, I actually wanted to mention that even starting as early as March, so March 2nd actually is going to be an important date that will kind of lead into potentially events that will start unfolding later in March and maybe culminate or so in early April. So March 2nd is going to be a new moon where it will see some really important transits globally and for the US, and basically that's where we may get some glance about the events that will then unfold later in March and in early April. So definitely important to pay attention to basically announcements, especially out of the US, that come out around March, or on specifically even March 2nd. Let's see. And specifically what we will have conjunction of Mars, Venus, and Pluto in Capricorn. And again, that itself is significant of some sort of shakeups, even violence or protests, but also important decisions about things like value of various assets, debt, loan, taxes, insurance, and that's globally, but specifically for the US, this conjunction, this triple conjunction, will also happen to be triggering Pluto in the 2nd house, which of course is house of finance in US horoscope, which again, I think at that time what we may see is, or hear, is a announcement about some sort of decisions that affect taxes, maybe like a tax reform of some sort, or tax credits, or even important news that will affect insurance companies, as well as just the rates, availability of cash, basically, mortgages and things of that nature. And again, I think it will be just important time globally, again, for these exact areas, but also for the US is particularly significant, which I think what may happen based on some previous transits that I've looked at in previous years, what may happen is that there may be some either reforms or decisions that may make it less attractive for investors to buy real estate or to basically own rental properties. And I think it may basically lead to initial maybe spike in activity where maybe investors or banks, I'm not sure, they will start offloading basically the inventory at that time. So there may be like a spike in either sales of new houses, for example, but then towards the end of March, and especially in April, and then again continuing into May even more, there may be really a flood of inventory basically, which may then lead to actually house prices, real estate prices falling, again due to the excessive inventory. And that's specific for the US in terms of the real estate situation, but generally announcements about, again, taxes, insurance, rates, loans, debt, all of those will be basically significant internationally, and that will come up right around March 2nd. And again, going into then late March and especially peaking around early April, we may see things that are like an excess of either inventory, for example, in US could be like real estate, but also excess of things like perhaps oil or pharmaceuticals or chemicals. It could be because maybe there was a need previously due to like pandemic to stock up on some like vaccine or some kind of other drug. And at that time, or indeed perhaps because of some not availability, but I guess there's a lot of, drug smuggling happening right now in the US, like, so maybe like this fentanyl, at least that's what I hear in the news. And so basically this is the time where anything to do with like chemicals, drugs, oil, or even Navy activities may all peak right around end of March and into early April, peaking with some events right around 4th and 5th of April. And basically, if there was indeed this pile up of maybe, I don't know, ships off the coast or oil tankers in some area, or there is some way of transporting maybe oil or something like that, there might be like this big pile up of this inventory at that time. So up to say early April, maybe prices of those kind of either commodities or services or businesses may be actually rising, and they may be making more and more profit through about, again, early April. That can be rising. So maybe movies can actually be coming out that are really profitable, that maybe portray some fantasy world, for example, or are related to, say, Navy, and again, anything to do with water, like a water world fantasy of some sort. But again, after peaking around early April, there may be some either specific event, like maybe some, there are too many ships, they have oil on them and they collide, I don't know, in the fog, and there's a major oil spill. Or there's again some tensions on some body of water involving like some Navy activities, and again, they kind of culminate or reach some sort of a crescendo, I don't know, some basically problems explode right in early April, and at that time then things kind of, the tensions then are regulated to go down, or the oil prices are regulated to go down, or again, if there are improvement in say healthcare situation, then that's stockpile of certain kind of drugs and pharmaceuticals is no longer needed, even though they are now available almost to anyone, and they're in excess, but nobody really suddenly needs them. So that's basically early April. And weather-wise, this is also the time where I expect there to be some really strong either floods or storms, and really major, the ones that are maybe not seen on a scale of maybe like once in 12 years, something that people are like can be seen on the boats in the street somewhere of a large city. So another then time period globally that is significant is right around 1st of August. And again, things obviously don't just come up on one day and disappear on the next, but things may be building up in especially July into early August, and maybe culminating right around August 1st, plus minus a few days. And that may be some really major event that may be a shakeup for financial industry, banks, institutions that loan money, handle money, etc. And also it may be related, I think, again, this could be significant globally, but also it could be related to specifically financial institutions and or like builder companies in China, because again, this is going to be a significant transit of Mars conjuncting Uranus, and I believe the North Node. However, at the same time, it's going to be opposing Venus in the horoscope of China. And also something that I noticed just briefly glancing in the horoscope of Putin, Russian president, that also it will affect his Jupiter, which will be a desire to like either expand something or be more free from something, and or Jupiter also has to do with like these values, moral things that are of moral significance to the person. And so maybe that person may feel like acting out on their what they believe is the right thing to do, and they will feel like kind of that they are doing the right thing per their beliefs, per their values. So it was just interesting to see how those things seem to be coinciding. So basically what I would expect at that time is that there may be some really big shakeups in financial markets, again, maybe related to China, but also of global significance, maybe not necessarily related to China. And again, potentially a big drop in the stock market, some volatility again in the value of, say, bank stocks, or some basically assets that are tied to banks' assets or savings, and fluctuations in the rates. So basically some sort of events that are surprising or even shocking, if the event was predictable. Maybe there are some policy announcements that were expected to come up, say around August 1st. They may still have an element of surprise, like they may come up sooner than expected, or be of a much more kind of a more aggressive nature than expected, again with the presence of Mars there, and may elicit quite a bit of either pushback or upset. And at the same time, also weather-wise, there may be really strong fires, winds, storms, tornadoes. Of course, in the US, that's, I think, corresponds to the hurricane season, so really more stronger than usual. Hurricanes may be expected right again early August, and also at the same time, there may be, unfortunately, accidents, and with Uranus and Mars, they may be related to excessive winds, excessive speed, fire, even an attack, like our attack with some rocket, a drone, or if there are fireworks that are exploding, something that explodes really fast because, again, there's just too much wind, too much speed, and or sudden attack that is unexpected. And because of the node presence, there are nodes of the moon being involved in this transit, it may affect large groups of people, again, on the level of maybe even countries. So really some sort of a event that may be unpleasant, even cause some services being out, power being out, and again, unfortunately, it may affect financial markets, and maybe even cause some problems for banks, and there may be issues with like money being devalued really quickly, or like a run on the bank, or an service outage where people cannot access their money for a short period of time, or I don't know, short usually because Uranus usually switches things on and off really quick, so I don't think it will be prolonged, but it could be kind of scary for a short period of time. And of course also the nodes being in the Scorpio and Taurus also have to do with things like insurance and taxes. So again, there might be some decisions, yet again, tax reforms of some sort that are more aggressive or more shocking than expected, or there may be some problems for insurance companies, which again, I just mentioned, there may be some events that are perhaps weather related, but nevertheless, the damage that they may do can be considerable, and again, that may affect insurance companies. And then finally, after this, we will have events right around October 11, but really it will also begin in September, and from, let's say, September 14th through October 30th, but again, especially in October and especially around October 11th, and that will coincide with the final, not precise, but close square between Saturn and Uranus, and right around the 11th, we will also have Mars with Moon squaring Neptune, which again goes back to issues around like Navy, some skirmishes related to oil, or around bodies of water, or some problems where there was like an attack on, say, a refinery, or like an accident involving an oil rig or oil tanker, oil spill, or some arguments over oil prices, or just oil and gas related projects, some problems with chemicals, some problems with drugs, concerns over pharmaceuticals, concerns about, again, another spike of the epidemic. And yet again, I think there may be a large market drop right around October 8th through the 14th, and again, especially around the 11th of October. So then let's see. For some countries, and especially, I think it may affect either US, China, and or Turkey, period of 1st through the 11th of November is significant, and I think there may be again some sort of a shakeup this time. I think it may actually be an actual earthquake. There will be some significant transits basically, as well as a total lunar eclipse on the 8th of November, which for the US, of course, it will coincide with midterm elections, for Taiwan and for Turkey, similar transits in the past have coincided with really major earthquakes, and of course other problems that may come up at the same time. Could be some, again, like a mudslide or some industrial incident, plane crash, or like spike in militarized activities or protests. And as I mentioned, for the US, this is going to be also the time when there's a midterm election where they elect basically House of Representative elections, and there will be basically, I think, still some sort of either shakeup or surprises. Even at this time, currently, I think the prediction is that more Republicans will win. However, I think there's still things may turn out to be unexpected, or there may be more surprises that currently people are predicting because of basically Uranus conjuncting one of the nodes, and Uranus is not the planet that behaves in any sort of predictable manner and likes to bring surprises, revolution, demands, freedom, and basically it doesn't like the rules and does not follow the predicted, order, etc. So whatever the predicted outcome might be for the elections or for whatever events that are expected around that lunar eclipse date of the 8th. So for example, if somebody's planning, maybe an event, it doesn't have to be related to the elections, things may not quite go as planned, and there may be much more chaos or much more disruption than expected. And again, there may be some surprising fluctuations at the same time for the markets, in the value of currencies and cryptocurrencies. So basically, definitely an important date to keep an eye on. And just generally overall, 2022 seems to be a year of definitely important events. Year of Pluto return for the US, and year where Neptune will be entering its 4th house, which has to do again with like real estate, banks, assets. There may be some confusion there, flooding either of inventory, mortgages underwater, and things of that nature. Definitely the area to keep an eye on, especially starting in March and into like April and May. So after I looked at the date for the midterm elections for the US at 2022, I decided to also take a quick look at the 2024 elections. And I thought that it was interesting to note that in November of 2024, we will have Pluto entering the sign of Aquarius. So going from Capricorn, that is the sign of power, centralized and belonging more to a rigid, structured organization, a government, large corporation, that Pluto will actually be entering in a sign of Aquarius, at least in the Western astrology, where basically it is associated with decentralized power, like distributed architecture, where you have many nodes, and each of the nodes is equally important. So it seems like the concept of basically power, it could be, of course, power where you have the power of people who rule, I guess, or who are important in some way in society, but also nuclear power or power plants in general, and how the power is generated, basically that it may come from multiple sources where each entity becomes more independent, and each entity is contributing kind of more, and even also is responsible, of course, for more than before. So less focus on this one single source of power, or one single structure, or structure being very rigid with this main leader at the top, but more focus on kind of a more, I guess, distributed sort of power that belongs to a group of people. So that's definitely interesting as a just global trend unfolding at that time. So also what's interesting to note is that shortly before the election on the October 2nd of 2024, there will be a solar eclipse where it will actually form Jupiter at the time of the eclipse will form an important transit to the horoscope of Donald Trump. So I think there is a good chance that indeed Trump will run in the 2024 election. And at that time, around October 2nd, of the time of the solar eclipse, actually the Jupiter is going to be making an aspect to the nodes in Trump's chart, as well as Sun and Moon. So this may make Trump feel extra, I guess, feeling like his destiny is about to be, I guess, either revealed, or that he needs to act on something to basically fulfill his destiny. Nodes usually in one's chart show basically what the person is trying to accomplish in a given lifetime. And then, of course, with the impact on Sun and the Moon, he may be feeling extra, I guess, either good about himself emotionally, or feel like expanding his influence, or that he is lucky, or that things are unfolding well for him. Again, this more could be an internal subjective feeling rather than necessarily something that reflects reality. At the same time, of course, transit of Jupiter may bring issues of like legal nature, and with the nodes, again, it may bring either acquaintances from the past or issues from the past. So if there are legal problems or some relations with international partners, again, Jupiter has to do with international like relations, and those things may again come up at that time, which may necessarily not be helpful, but certainly this is what we may hear about in the news. And let's see, and before the elections also, there will be some transits again of on-off, basically the entire 24, I'd say maybe even fall of 24, spring of 25, of Uranus going Trump's midheaven, which has to do with sudden changes in his status. So he can kind of rise quickly and fall, or fall, rise, or even it could occur multiple times. So definitely, again, as I mentioned before, Uranus is a planet of surprises. There might be some really dramatic kind of changes and surprises, that whether or not he is nominated, whether or not he's actually elected, and or he's elected and he decides, I wouldn't say he step down, but things that are not quite set in stone, and this will not kind of be set in stone until, I would say, May of 2025. So before the elections, actually, Jupiter will be making favorable transits to Trump's Sun and his, I believe, North Node. And basically, right around October of 2024, I believe subjectively Trump may feel good, like everything is going well for him. At the same time, these, like I said, legal issues may be of concern, whether it's the legal issues from the past or connections with the foreign partners from the past that may come up at that time, or it could be new legal issues that maybe are of concern. However, that kind of a feeling of things that are going well, the expansion is happening, may actually go away after about October of 2024 for a while. So it could be, if there are legal issues that are pending, they go away for a while, or if there's like a reversal of luck at that time. And so that actually doesn't then return, those issues or that feeling that things are going well doesn't return until about spring of 2025. So in March of 2025 is when Uranus direct will be yet again transiting over his midheaven. So if there was an election and it's disputed, and basically the status at that time of whether Trump is loser or winner, in March of 2025, that may change. And again, it could be a surprise change. And also at the same time, again, late April, early May, I believe, of 2025 is yet what again we will have now Jupiter direct going, I believe, over I think it's Moon in horoscope of Donald Trump. So basically, yet again, he's feeling yet again good and positive about himself. And at the same time, right around the election time itself in November of 24, as well as at this time in late April of 25, where I just mentioned there may be either reversal in sort of fortune for Trump, or reversal in his status, or sudden shakeups or surprises regarding his status as a leader, basically. That's also when we will have Mars opposing Pluto. So at the time of the election, and also at the time of this either changes in Trump's status, something to do with either legal issues or previous acquaintances that are international acquaintances. And again, I'm not saying it will be in his favor or he will lose some situation. That I'm not sure of. However, at the time of this kind of either finalization of his status or some additional announcements that will somehow change his status, there will be yet again difficult transits, specifically opposition between Mars and Pluto, which coincide usually with either violence or protests or anger, and even some activities that involve military, because Pluto and Mars relate to things like police, war, anger, of course, things like that. So basically, either way you look at it, I think on one hand, I think if there are people betting whether or not Trump will be a nominee or I guess presidential candidate for the Republican Party, I think there's a good chance that he will, because there are many transits to his chart right at that time. At the same time, I don't think that elections will go smoothly and things will just be immediately, one and done. I think indeed there may be protests regardless who wins, regardless who runs. I think definitely some difficulties, and I think there's even a chance that things may drag on to as late as like May of even 2025 for some reason, or in March through May of 2025. Certainly there are some signs of there being some either reversals or surprises regarding Trump's status. Again, is it because he steps down due to some legal issues, or there's a yet another concern about elections and there's some legal disputes and then he's appointed? Whichever way it goes, definitely it will not sit well with I guess people, and either way I would expect there to be some spike in just basically protests and difficulties. But as I mentioned before, globally the good news is that, at least in my opinion, that in November of 24 we will have Pluto actually entering Aquarius, where just generally and globally, the focus will be now less on who is the leader, who is, so to speak, this one leader or this one entity or this large corporate entity that may provide some sort of a leadership. It could be now thought of more as, okay, here's this union of people. People are a little bit more kind of free to be their own I guess have their own, Aquarius has to do with like freedom and revolution, I would even say. And so there's a little bit more focus on these more equal relations, where each entity has more say in how basically power is distributed. So that I think is actually a good upcoming influence that we should be looking forward to. So hope you found this interesting, and we'll come back and check me out next week, as well as stay tuned for the 2022 predictions on this channel. And until then, I hope you have a fantastic week. I'll see you later. Bye.